everyone, welcome to Curiosity Students Question the World and Connecting Taiwan. The topic for today is opportunities for Taiwan's next generation leaders and entrepreneurs amidst a global seismic shift. A view from Silicon Valley. I'm Sandy from Fujian Catholic University, and I'll be the MC for today. We've been fortunate to have Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar, the Executive Director of Taiwan Science and Technology Hub at Stanford, to deliver her speech. Before we start, I would like to provide a brief overview of our program, Curiosity Students Question the World, as well as introduce our team. Additionally, I'll explain the process of the Q&A activities. To benefit our audiences, I'll switch to Mandarin. 欢迎各位教授、同学、观众们来参加由好奇学生大哉问、大同大学、辅英科技大学、东吴大学、铭传大学、静宜大学、辅仁大学、台北科技大学、慈济大学、嘉义大学联合主办的好奇学生大哉问连结台湾系列专题讲座。谢谢现在线上参与的各所国内外学校学生，也感谢业界人士、各位伙伴热烈响应。大家知道好奇学生大哉问的主旨是什么吗？好奇学生大哉问的主旨是建立一个活动平台，邀请海内外专业人士，透过每月一次的专题演讲，将他们的知识经验与大家分享，让同学们能够聆听前辈们的演讲，激发同学们的好奇心，自主学习并提出问题。线上的同学们知道好奇学生大哉问的宗旨是什么吗？大胆提问才能成就非凡未来，所以我们愿意提供丰富的提问奖金，也希望各位同学踊跃参加。活动时间和呈现方式，活动安排在每月第3周的星期五早上10点10分到11点45分，由线上视讯方式呈现。学生们如何参与？演讲前大胆提问，追踪我们的官方社群，社群连结都在聊天室。在 KKTIX 报名活动时提出问题，演讲者会参考提问内容规划本次演讲。演讲中填写问题表单，让演讲者在 Q&A 环节回答问题。欢迎和感谢时可以按荧幕右下角的回应来鼓掌和谢谢。演讲结束后，欢迎参与好奇学生大哉问工作团队，学习团队合作能力。我们先请我们的节目主办人刘登凯博士为同学们介绍提问奖金的部分，有请刘博士。
好，谢谢主持人，欢迎大家来参与我们这个节目。我在下面一段呢，我用英文来表示我对于我演讲者的感谢，然后呢，我再回来用中文来说明一下我们的这个得奖的这个奖金的情况。So I want to take up this opportunity and so grateful to have Dr. Laura to join us as our invited special guest. And also, I want to thanks to one of our founder, David Kuo, introduced our speaker to us here. This is so wonderful. Unfortunately, David could not join us, and so unfortunately, he could not join us right now. So in addition, I really appreciate Dr. Len and the 辅仁大学校长 and give the introduction for speaker, and I really appreciate that. So I'm going to switch to Mandarin to introduce our program. 各位同学大家好，我们的奖品有2个部分，第一个部分是在会前，那同学都填这个报名单的时候，你就问了很多问题，我们这次有相当多的问题。那我们这问题呢，都已经给我们的演讲者，可以让他参考一下，同学想听的东西。那他也非常感谢同学呢，给这么多的这个建议的。那我会从这里面会选出3名来给同学一个奖励的。那第1名给台币1000块钱，第2名给台币500块钱，第3名给台币300块钱。同时呢，我们也鼓励同学在听完演讲以后呢，能够继续发问题。所以我们同时在这个现场呢，我们也会另外选出3名同学，也一样的，我们给第1名给1000，第2名给500，第3名给300。那这一次呢，我们跟上次有很多的不同，除了这个发问题给奖金以外，我们另外呢还有在同学们 对于我们本节目有什么回馈，想要知道说哪些将来想要听的那些演讲者的题目跟演讲者的内容等等，我也希望你们能够在我们的回馈表单上面能够告诉我们。同样的，我们会在会后呢，我们会选这个3名来，那我们会给你这个给奖品。那等一下我们的主持人会介绍一下 ，OK。好，那我们就谢谢主持人，我就把这个现场交给我们的主持人。
谢谢刘博士的说明。接着在这里和各位同学解释一下节目流程。演讲后会有1分钟的工商时间，再开始约40分钟的 Q&A 活动环节。如果听了演讲者精彩的演讲后产生任何问题，欢迎同学透过聊天室连结发送问题，我们将现场选出3个好问题给予提问奖金，也会选出演讲前报名表单中的3个问题，总共6个得奖名额。问题可以包含 Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar 的专业领域和心路历程等方面来询问问题。请得奖同学活动结束后留下来加入颁奖赖群，确认进入得奖赖群后再离开。逾时或是没有上线聆听演讲的得奖同学，奖项会被取消，以利奖金颁发后续作业。本次的演讲会以英文的方式呈现，大家可以点选荧幕最右边的3个点开启字幕哦。另外补充一点，大家可以使用 Google 的语音翻译功能，让 Google 为您进行即时翻译。提问的部分还是可以用中文提问哦。本次演讲主题由 Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar 带来，在全球巨震中，台湾下一代领袖和企业家的机会，来自矽谷的观点。Opportunities for Taiwan's next generation leaders and entrepreneurs amidst a global seismic shift. A view from Silicon Valley. 让我们欢迎辅仁大学的蓝义正蓝校长为我们介绍今天的演讲嘉宾 Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar。有请蓝校长。
好谢谢主持人Thanks very much for hosting this event. And first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Liu Deng Kai for his invitation for me to introduce Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar. And Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar, really pleased to see you online. Appreciated your time given to our students in Taiwan that I'm sure they're going to learn a lot from you and getting many questions that they're curious about, not only your experiences, but also the areas of research that you dedicated to. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to speak in Mandarin just for the benefits of our students. It's actually introducing you and your background. 好各位同学大家好我是辅仁大学校长蓝义正。那今天很高兴这个刘博士邀请我来介绍我们这个Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar 这个Laura 教授。那我们这个今天的讲者呢 Laura 教授现任是史丹佛大学台湾科技中心的执行长。那他拥有哥伦比亚大学哥伦比亚学院的化学专业优等生的学士学位，和加州大学伯克莱分校就是我们诺贝尔奖李远哲教授的化学博士的学位。那这个Dr. Smoliar 在加入矽谷之前呢，他还跟随着李远哲教授前往台湾在中央研究院工作。随后呢在矽谷和亚洲的跨国公司呢工作超过23年，拥有丰富的科学研究、管理和创投经验。那Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar 曾在多个硬体行业中工作过，包括这个数据的这个储存显示器、雷射和生物技术的仪器。那 Dr. Smoliar 在2005年的时候创立一家名叫做 amidst Photonics 的一个新创公司那这个新创公司呢被 NASDAQ 股票的代码纳入为 IPGP 这个股票代号收购。那他曾担任董事长兼首席执行官，并从美国和日本的投资者在那里筹集了很多轮的资金他于2016年共同创立了 Berkeley Catalyst Fund。那这个组织呢就主要致力于投资新创企业， 特别是那些与加州大学伯克莱分校有联系的一些新创企业包括我们有老师学生还有校友开发的一些技术。那该基金通过通常投资于生命科学、生物技术、清洁技术和其他的创新领域它主要的目的呢是在支持加州伯克莱大学分校社区的突破性研究以及创新想法的一个商业化，我们就讲一些 commercialization 然后在2017年的时候呢 Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar 被选为光学工程学会就是 SPIE 就是 SPIE 的高级会员，并因其指导工作而被女性科学协会授予Judy's Pool 奖这是一个非常 prestigious 一个奖那在2020年的时候，他被选为光学工程学会 SPICE 的会士曾担任加州大学伯克莱分校哈斯商学院哈斯影响力基金就是 Has Impact Fund 的顾问。那目前呢，他是担任这个创投公司的董事会的成员这个 Activate.org 的领导委员成员和哥伦比亚大学诚心科学领导委员会的成员。那我们呢，是不是各位同学以热烈的掌声来欢迎我们 Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar 给我们带来这个了解台湾在新兴科技的领域的潜力，赴美参与与领导力与创业的优势，下一代的领导者肩负的使命。Let's welcome Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar to deliver the speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the organizers, Deng Kai Liu and David Kuo, my old friend, and Dr. Lan, thank you for that nice intro, and the organizing team. This is very professionally run. It's quite impressive. I'm speaking to you now from Silicon Valley in California, representing the Taiwan Science and Technology Hub at Stanford, which I will tell you more about going forward. And Denkai, are you going to put the slides up?
Yes, I will do that. When I'm doing that, you might want to just cover words with, with
yes.
Dr. Lan. And
Sure.
And I'm
Tell
sure
me
you
when...
come to the United States, come to the, to Taiwan very
Dr.
often.
Lan, we would welcome you to come to Stanford and visit our hub, for sure.
Absolutely.
And,
yeah, thanks very much. My university is also a comprehensive university. We do have quite a significant chemistry department as well as the high-tech department. So would be very interested to work with you, talk about research collaboration and especially the startup funds that we can work together to promote more innovation and commercialization of research outcomes.
I'd be happy to do that. I come to Taiwan about 2 or 3 times a year. I was last there in February, and
right.
I'm always so impressed by the entrepreneurial spirit in Taiwan, and I think there's so much potential to bring things out of the research into commercialization there, and there are a lot of great opportunities in the U.S. to help. And now with the online world, you can even access many tools from Taiwan, right? So,
yes.
And if you bring students to the U.S. to visit, we would also welcome you to bring your groups to Stanford. We have many programs we can show them. And,
fantastic. Yes.
Yeah,
we
do host groups like that. So we're a small team at Stanford. We sit inside the chemical engineering department, and but we touch all of the STEM activities at Stanford and the different schools, engineering, med school. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll be
So,
in touch. Yeah.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess
Thank
with your permission, maybe I can exchange the email for both sides. Is that
That would be
Of course.
wonderful.
Yes, that
Yeah.
would be great. Yes. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks
cool.
for Dr. Liu's introduction.
Thank you.
Well, I
Yes.
appreciate your time here as well. Okay,
Not a
can you see?
problem.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Wonderful. Laura, can you see my screen right now?
I can see it. Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to share to start your presentation. How about this
Okay.
presentation?
I can
Is
see
that-
it. Yes.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you. Thank you. So once again, thank you to all the organizers. And what you see here is the first part of a title. And if you go to page 2, you'll see the second part of my title. And you might say, why does she have such a long title? And my answer would be, we are living at a critical and complex time in history. And that is why it's such a long title. I came up with global seismic shift before the recent earthquake in Taiwan. And when the earthquake hit, I was so worried about my friends, but it seems most of the people I know in Taipei have been okay. But the seismic shift is a metaphor for geopolitical changes that are happening now in the world. And science and technology can no longer be in a bubble, insulated from geopolitics, especially for Taiwan. So I want to talk to you about the intersection of science and technology with policy, which is intertwined with geopolitics, and the growing awareness of Taiwan in the United States. Then I want to talk to you about what students like you can do today, giving you some context from my own experiences, and introduce our Taiwan Science and Technology Hub at Stanford. I will also introduce some programs that you might consider at Stanford and at Berkeley as examples of next steps in your education that are not the PhD path that you may be familiar with, but are excellent preparation for entrepreneurs and investors. And finally, there are programs from the Taiwan Science and Technology Hub that you can access online, and we will touch on internships and going abroad for those. Okay, the next slide. So when I first arrived at Stanford to do the Taiwan Science and Technology Hub, one of the first groups I met is called the Project on Taiwan, that's housed in the Hoover Institute, which is a think tank on campus. They study political science and policy and national security issues. And they said, Laura, we need help on semiconductors. They are a national security issue, and we're not technical. And that was my wake-up call that science and technology no longer lives in a protected bubble. And it turns out it isn't just about semiconductors. Government policies impact AI, quantum, and even precision medicine. All of these areas are of interest to Taiwan as well as the USA. Okay, the next slide. Now. So you may have heard of, in the United States, of the CHIPS Act. And did you know that 2 of the main advisors to the United States government for the CHIPS Act have a Taiwan connection? The first one is Tzu-Jae King Liu, who's the Dean of Engineering at UC Berkeley. And second one is Philip Wong, who's a professor of electrical engineering at Stanford, and he's also involved in our hub. The CHIPS Act is really focused on the critical supply chains in the semiconductor industry. It's one of the hottest issues in the United States right now. And it's often talked about alongside the planned factory for TSMC in Arizona. Okay, next slide. But it's not just about semiconductors anymore. So we have pending legislation on artificial intelligence. It's also a very hot issue. One of the leaders guiding our government is at Stanford, Professor Fei-Fei Li. And she's also running a program at Stanford called HAI, which is the Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence. And it's a collection of professors who come from many different fields, but who all intersect artificial intelligence. It's quite interesting. And if you want to understand the rise of AI and read a great immigrant story as well, I highly recommend Fei-Fei Li's recent book, The Worlds I See, which I put a picture of in here. Okay, the next slide. Another important area that's getting attention in the political arena is quantum. So you may hear about quantum computing or encryption. These have tremendous promise, but they also present tremendous vulnerabilities. And so this is also a big area of mutual interest between Taiwan and the USA. The photo at the top right side is from a conference that was held in Taiwan on quantum. And at the far right, you see two individuals who look like they're from Silicon Valley because they're wearing jeans. And those are two Stanford professors that come from a program called Q-Farm at Stanford, which is the quantum initiative at Stanford. And again, that's a collection of professors who come from various fields, all impacting quantum. So the Taiwan hub sent these professors to participate. And again, we have pending legislation in this area. Okay, next slide. And finally, precision medicine is another area where we have pending legislation. There's something called the Biosecure Act that actually is threatening to disrupt supply chains in the biopharmaceutical industry quite significantly. And the sensitivities are around genetic data and patient data. This disruption could present an opportunity for Taiwan to fill a gap and step up to do a lot of the manufacturing that goes on in the biopharma industry. Taiwan's strength in biopharma is growing rapidly. And last February, we held the first ever JP Morgan Healthcare Conference in Taiwan. And that was a real signal of Taiwan's growing importance in this area. And it brought in people from many different countries, all focused on the biopharmaceutical industry. Okay, next slide. There's also a growing awareness of Taiwan in the United States. There was a time when typical Americans didn't know the difference between Taiwan and Thailand. That has fundamentally changed, especially when Americans felt the supply chain constraints brought on by the pandemic. Most famously, we couldn't buy cars in this country because the chips weren't available. And so people have become quite aware of Taiwan. There are now 3 programs at Stanford alone centered on Taiwan. The oldest one is at the Hoover Institute, the one I mentioned previously. The full name is called Taiwan in the Indo-Pacific region. That program is about 10 years old. And then our Taiwan Science and Technology Hub is just over a year old now. And there's a brand new program that is just starting this year in 2024. That's part of the Shorenstein Asia Pacific Research Center. That's also a Taiwan-focused program. So this is a lot of attention on Taiwan, which is quite interesting. And again, it reflects the current geopolitical situation. Okay, next slide. In addition, people become quite focused on the importance of international partnerships with Taiwan. There were 2 reports that were published in 2023, one from the Council on Foreign Relations and one from the Hoover Institute. And they were focused on US-Taiwan relations, and the Hoover report is particularly focused on the semiconductor industry. In both reports, some of the top recommendations are to foster collaborations between US and Taiwan in research, and also to increase workforce and educational people-to-people exchanges. And that's actually what our Taiwan Science and Technology Hub is really about. So it's very timely for us. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to shift gears a bit and try to talk about what you as students can do today. And I want to start by just giving you context from my own experience. So I think this is a great time for you to think about how you might go abroad for part of your education. And it's not just about going to school. You will build relationships that will last a lifetime. And they're so important. The picture here was taken in February on my recent people I met as a college student at Columbia University when I was about 19 years old. And we are still close friends. And actually, I was an undergraduate. They were graduate students in chemistry. And then I went to Berkeley to work on my Ph.D., and they came to Berkeley to be postdocs. So we actually had quite a bit of overlap in the United States. And then they both have become professors in Taiwan, and we still keep up our interactions. So really, it's never too early to start building relationships. Okay, next slide. So to give you a little more context, you heard my bio. I have, I guess, a special relationship with Taiwan because I went there as a graduate student and worked in an institute of academia Sinica called the Institute of Atomic and Molecular Sciences. And this institute was founded by my PhD advisor, Yuan Li, and a close friend of his. And that institute, unlike many of the academia Sinica institutes, that institute sits on the campus of National Taiwan University. So I was surrounded by college students and graduate students there and had so many interactions with them. It was a really formidable time in my life. And I went to Mandarin class. I ate meals with students every day and learned so much about the culture. And I actually loved it so much I stayed on for another year as a postdoc and worked at the Synchrotron Radiation Research Center in Hsinchu, and actually was going back and forth between Taipei and Hsinchu, which is why I have an expired now driver's license, which you can see. But that experience really set me up for my trajectory in Silicon Valley. My career trajectory started in research and development in a large company called Seagate. And that's actually where I met David Kuo, who invited me to give this talk. David and I shared an office. I moved into a number of hardware startups after that. And we would call those deep tech in today's words, but in those days we didn't have that term. We just called them hardware startups, but they were in displays and lasers and optical devices. And I became an entrepreneur at one point, and so I started my own laser company, and actually my customers were in Japan and my investors were in Japan, and my customers' customers were in Taiwan. So I was going back and forth to Asia quite a bit. And my comfort with doing that really stemmed from my original experience in Taiwan. And then eventually I started a venture capital firm to help bring things out of Berkeley and commercialize them and share the profits back with the school. Okay, next slide. So really those experiences have come full circle now. And I was asked to be the executive director for the first ever science and technology hub for Taiwan in a university on a campus of a US university, tier 1 university. And this is a big deal. We have an office on the Stanford campus that has Taiwan Science and Technology Hub on it. It's quite unusual. And in the photo here, this is a photo that was from our first annual symposium. There are a number of key members in this photo. In the brown suit, you'll see a woman named Ying Chang, who is really the founder of our hub. It was really her inspiration that made this happen. And working with the Minister of NSTC, Minister Wu, who's in the center, she really got this off the ground. And at Stanford, we have our co-chair, Zhenan Bao, who's in the pink blazer. And she's a professor of chemical engineering. And she's also a key member. And in the back, standing next to me, it's a little bit hard to see, but Philip Wong is there. And he's also part of our hub. And so at Stanford, these are the folks that make up the hub. And in Taiwan, we have CJ Chen, who's in the front, and he's on the Taiwan side. So we have a Taiwan office and the US office. And our main activities are the annual symposium, sponsoring postdocs to come from Taiwan to Stanford, sponsoring faculty to go from Stanford to Taiwan to speak. And then we hold quarterly seminars that are hybrid, and I'll speak more about those in a minute. Okay, and let me just say, this first annual symposium that we had last June, we were quite surprised that 500 people showed up in person for this. It was tremendous support for this hub. And it was a very diverse audience and a diverse set of speakers from both Stanford, Berkeley, and other places. And it was supported by the highest levels of the university. So we had the president, we had the dean of engineering from Stanford. We also had the dean of engineering from Berkeley. Okay, next slide. So what can you do today? So I want to talk a bit about some graduate programs that are maybe a little bit unusual to you, and entrepreneurship. So let's move forward with that to the next slide. So the first program is a program at Stanford Engineering. There's a Stanford Engineering Entrepreneurship Center, and this sits inside Stanford's Technology Ventures program. And it's really a great training ground. It's exposing students to the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem that surrounds Stanford, bridging research, teaching, and the entrepreneurial communities external to the university. Okay, next slide. And I'd like to point out that the executive director for this program is from Taiwan. She did move to the US at age 5, but she is from Taiwan. She has extensive industry experience and is also a leadership coach. And she really runs a fantastic program. Her name is Mo Fong. And next slide. And one of the graduates of this program is Ann Wu, who's also from Taiwan and is now running her startup. the program has several different kinds of fellows. So in this program, you're doing an engineering degree. So she was doing an electrical engineering degree. And then you do the venture fellow program alongside. And there are different venture capital firms that sponsor the venture fellows. So Ann was a Threshold Ventures fellow. There are also Mayfield fellows and different fellows named after the different firms. So it's done in conjunction with another degree. And next slide. And this is something that you can tap into from Taiwan now. If you look at this web link for eCorner, you can access seminars from thought leaders in entrepreneurship, and you might recognize some of the ones featured here, especially Morris Chang. And they really have very distinguished people speaking about entrepreneurship. So this is an excellent way to start exposing yourself to the ideas around entrepreneurship and learn about the experiences of different entrepreneurs. Okay. So now we're going to shift. Now we're going to change gears to go to Berkeley. Can we go to the next slide?
I think we have an open mic.
Yeah.
Let's have a mute. Thank you.
Okay. So the next program I'm going to tell you about is a master's program in product development. It sits inside UC Berkeley's College of Chemistry. And this is a 9 to 12 month program, depending on the focus area you pick. And it doesn't require the many years long commitment of a PhD program. The classes are about 40 people, roughly. So each cohort that comes through is about 40. And next slide. Unlike many university programs, the faculty for this program come from industry. So these are real industry veterans who understand how product development works in industrial settings. And they also understand what companies need in their workforces. They all have extensive startup, joint venture, and international experience. And they're incredibly dedicated to the success of their students. They accept many international students into the program, and a growing number of those students have been coming from Taiwan. One of the key things they do is to interview students by Zoom to make sure that their level of English is sufficient to be successful in the program. But it's really a fantastic program. You do a capstone project, which is a project from industry. And so each group of students works with a group in industry on a specific problem as part of the program. Next slide. The PDP started in chemical engineering, offering a master's in chemical engineering. New in 2024, they're now also offering a master's in chemistry, which is including biochemistry, so more suitable for the biopharma industry. And the PDP sits filling a niche really that was unaddressed between a straight engineering PhD or master's and an MBA and engineering management. So it's been quite successful. If you go to the next slide, you can see that the program has steadily grown through the years, even through the pandemic years. And there are some specialty classes in semiconductors available through a partnership with the engineering school. And many graduates have been recruited directly into the semiconductor industry from the program. But you can also do biotech. We've also had students start new companies coming out of the program. Okay, next slide. Also at Berkeley, there is a business school called the Haas School. And inside the school, you can do an MBA, but if you're interested in venture capital, there's a special program called the Haas Impact Fund. And it's a really interesting program. And I had the pleasure of being an advisor to this program. And I was assigned 4 students. And we went through the whole process that venture capitalists go through in finding new deals, evaluating them, doing the diligence, finding co-investors. And it's really the best way to learn about venture capital is by practicing it. And at the end, it's kind of fun. Each of the teams presents to the whole class, and there's a bit of a competition, and the winner gets to invest $75,000 into a startup on behalf of the school. So if the startup has a good return, that return will benefit the school financially. One of my students, the one on the end in the gray shirt, his name is Terrence. He's from Taiwan, and he has graduated, and he now works for Breakthrough Energy, which is Bill Gates's venture fund. Okay, next slide. So I want to tell you a little bit about the hub and our events and internships next. So next slide. So in 2024, we started to do quarterly seminars that are hybrid. They're held on Zoom morning time in Taiwan, and they're in person at Stanford. They're announced via a mailing list and LinkedIn posts, and I'll give you links for that. And so this is something that you can access from Taiwan. Our first quarterly symposium had 2 amazing speakers in precision medicine. One, Joseph Wu, is a professor in the medical school at Stanford. He's also the director of the Stanford Cardiovascular Institute, and he's the president of the American Heart Association. We had a speaker from Berkeley, Patrick Hsu, who's a professor of bioengineering, and he's also the co-founder of an institute called ARC Institute. That's an independent institute that pulls on professors from Stanford, Berkeley, and UC San Francisco, which is a medical school, and it provides them amazing resources for research. Okay, next slide. Our next quarterly seminar is coming up at the end of May. It'll be May 23rd in Taiwan in the morning, May 22nd in California, and it'll be focused on material science. And that QR code will take you to a page where you can sign up for our mailing list. And then you will get notices about upcoming seminars like this that you can register for to get the link. And we will have 2 speakers. One is an entrepreneur and one is a professor. Energy efficiency and space are the topics intertwined with material science. And so we hope you'll consider signing up. And the next slide. So the first speaker, Amin Safir, is a Stanford alum, and he worked in Taiwan in the display industry. And so I thought he'd be particularly good to hear from. That experience of working in Taiwan informs how he's running his startup, which is called Tint Technologies. Tint is working in an area called dynamic windows, and it leverages a lot of the manufacturing capabilities of the display industry. And he understands what those are in Taiwan. Taiwan has some unique resources in the display industry that we just don't have in the United States anymore. And so he is partnering now in Taiwan with his company. And next slide. Debbie Sineski is a professor in the aeronautics and astronautics field. And she's also a Berkeley alum. So in each of these, I try to have some mix of Berkeley and Stanford. And she's going to talk about materials science in space. And so this should be really fascinating. And by the way, space is a big topic for Taiwan, as I learned from your National Science and Technology Council. Okay, next slide. So finally, I want to encourage you to look for internships abroad. I think those are essential for building real-world experience outside of the classroom. And overseas internships offer an even more enriching opportunity because you can learn about work cultures outside of Taiwan. And I have here an example. I wanted to tell you a story. This is the story of Alicia, who's in the picture with me. Alicia was a master's student at Berkeley when I first met her. There's a master's of bioprocess engineering that she was doing. She is from Taiwan in the sense of her family's from Taiwan, but she grew up in the United States. And she came to me and said, I want to work in Taiwan like you did. How do I do that? And we didn't have a good answer right away, but I talked to Minister Wu and said, you know, I'm getting these questions. And the next thing I knew, NSTC spun up this pilot program to bring students from outside of Taiwan to Taiwan to do an internship. And Alicia is one of the first people who did this. And she did a 3-month internship, and now she has a job at one of the first precision bio manufacturing companies, in precision fermentation is what we call it in Taiwan. And so I see this as a success story. I think there are many internships to bring people to the United States from overseas, and you can look for those. You can also encourage NSTC to create more of those. I think they're quite receptive to these kind of suggestions. And the Taiwan Science and Technology Hub is now working to develop bilateral internships for the future. So we hope you'll keep an eye out for those. Okay, next slide. So I hope in all this I've convinced you to consider reaching out across the ocean. You are the future leaders for Taiwan, and Taiwan really needs leaders who understand the global landscape. And so living and working abroad is especially when you're young, it's incredibly helpful. Your global relationships are what will ensure Taiwan's success in the long term. And this photo is also from our first symposium. It's a picture of Myron Scholes, who's a Nobel economist who spoke at our symposium. He's on the Stanford faculty. And here he's with Minister Wu from NSTC. And I feel this captured the idea of really engaging across the ocean. And I'll leave you with a quote from my PhD advisor, Y.T. Lee, which he gave me many years ago, by the way, when I was working on Berkeley Catalyst Fund, because that fund was also trying to bridge between Asia and the US. The quote is, "We are citizens of the world. We need to bridge national and cultural boundaries to accelerate deployment of solutions to a broad range of social challenges." Okay, and the last slide. So these QR codes will take you to our website, our LinkedIn group, and our mailing list. And in particular, the mailing list is where new programs are announced. And also we announce them on LinkedIn. And we encourage you to do all 3 of the QR codes. We have an outstanding program manager named Ellen Zheng, and she manages all of this, and she does a fantastic job. And she sends out the announcements. And I hope also that you might have the opportunity to come visit us at Stanford. Ellen and I sit inside chemical engineering in the Sharam Center in our Taiwan Science and Technology Hub office. And we love to host students who come to visit. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar, for your wonderful speech. We will now take a short commercial break. Following the break, we will proceed with a Q&A session, which is expected to last approximately 40 minutes. And I would like to briefly explain the process in Mandarin. 接下来进入我们的工商时间。我们好奇学生大哉问团队4月和 Beauty Player 品牌合作。好，我们好奇学生大哉问团队4月和 Beauty Player 品牌合作，要准备送给同学们面膜和叶黄素。只要你有在建议表单中给我们演讲建议，我们会选出3位建议最好的同学，分别送出奖项。Beauty Player 品牌历程：2017年创立，进军马来西亚、加拿大市场，隔年2018年进军香港、澳门市场，并受泰国曼谷美容展邀请，2019年登上 Vogue 报道。那我们现在来播放一下品牌的影片。看完有没有觉得很心动呢？如果觉得很心动的话，快点给我们意见，就有机会获得奖品哦。好的，那我们再来准备要进入到 Q&A 环节，到11点40分。如果现场有任何问题，欢迎利用工作人员背板上的 QR code 或聊天室的 Q&A 表单连结问问题。问题被跳中，线上参与的观众可以开启您的麦克风与讲者互动。追问一题，如果没有问题，也请说 Thank you, Dr. Smoliar。实体现场提问的同学，听到我喊你的名字的时候，请到台上拿麦克风，站在镜头前与讲者互动。互动当下可以追问一题，如果没有问题，也请说 Thank you, Dr. Smoliar， 并回到座位。OK， 那我们要开始 Q&A 咯，请播放第一个问题。OK， 第一个问题是来自大同大学电机工程学系的邱秀泽同学的问题。What are the requirements to become a leader? Curious about expert insights on leadership. Let's welcome Dr. Smoliar to answer this question.
This is a big topic. I think that leadership, it comes in many, many forms, and there are many styles of leadership. Really, being a leader means people want to follow you. And so it's about inspiring people to follow your vision and to work towards a common goal. Sometimes leaders are chosen by the people that want to follow them. Some leaders are actually quite reluctant and get kind of pulled into it. But I think the most important thing is to really be able to listen and work with people and have what we call high emotional intelligence. That's what really distinguishes leaders.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smoliar. 请问邱秀泽同学有在现场吗？如果在现场的话，请到台上，然后和讲者互动。OK， 请问还有问题吗？
没有。Thank you, Dr. Smoliar.
Okay, thank you. And next question, please. 我们下一题，谢谢。Next slide, please. 下一页。Okay, thank you. OK， 一样是邱同学的问题。OK， do Taiwan's emerging industry types have to develop abroad to have better chances of getting better salaries and growth opportunities? I want to know how my future will go. Okay, let's welcome Dr. Smoliar.
So I think, if you're building a new company or a new industry, the reason you need to move abroad often is just to access bigger market, right? Taiwan is a small market, and so that's one thing. There is also a big economic disparity between Taiwan and U.S. And also other countries, right? And so I think if you want to, you can say, oh, I should go to the US because the salaries are higher, but actually the cost of living is also higher. So you have to understand that it's things scale, the expenses scale as well. But I think the real answer is if you want to grow something significant, you need to access a global market. And so you probably will need to go abroad at some point to build out your companies.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
Okay.
Smoliar. And
Thank you
周
very
同
much.
学 ，Okay, thank you.
Yes.
好，现在我们现场的问题还有一点少，欢迎大家踊跃发问哦。OK， 下一题 ，Next slide, please.
This is also a big topic. So let me talk a little bit about early stage investing. It is very different than later stage. In early stage investing, the most important thing you're investing in is people, is team. And a good team can pivot, and they can change market, they can change technology. But a team that doesn't stick together and falls apart, that's very hard to fix. And so early stage investors look very hard at the team. In terms of finding pain points and so forth, we go through a process called customer discovery, and really try to understand where there are gaps in the solutions out there that customers feel. But sometimes only going by what customers say can be limiting. There's an important concept called disruptive technology. So technologies that customers can't tell you that they need, but they actually need. And there are many good examples of this. There's a famous book by Clayton Christensen called The Innovator's Dilemma that is about disruptive technologies. And that is really, there are certain people who have a good vision for that and see those product opportunities. A customer wouldn't have told you that they needed an iPod when the iPod was conceived because it was just too foreign a concept, right? So Steve Jobs had that kind of talent. It's an unusual talent. But most entrepreneurs have to go through a customer discovery process. So many customer interviews to really understand what's going on in a particular industry.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smoliar. 请问林佩玉同学有在现场吗？或者是在线上？欢迎打开麦克风和镜头和讲者互动哦。请问林同学有在吗？Okay, I think she's not here, so maybe next
okay.
question. 好，我们下一题，谢谢。
Okay. So, Taiwan is very strong in hardware, and so very natural fits to go beyond semiconductors are things like medical devices and life science instrumentation. But we're seeing a growth in the biopharma industry, and you're seeing some companies actually expand into the US now. Bora Pharmaceuticals just bought a US company and now has a presence in the US. So that's a company that started in Taiwan. And there's quite a few. Pharma Essentia has a presence in Boston now. So you're seeing more in the life sciences. And I think Taiwan actually has very excellent life science research, and people are trained very well. So I think there's a lot of potential there.
Okay, thank you. 请问周佩珍同学有在现场吗？或在线上？欢迎打开麦克风和镜头与讲者互动哦。请问周同学在吗？ Okay, I think she's not here too, so maybe next question. Thank you. 好，我们下一题。
Speak out for Taiwan. Well, I lived in Taiwan at a very formidable time in my life. I was focused on my science at that time, but I lived through the first election of a president in Taiwan. That's when I lived there. That's when Lee Teng-hui was elected for the first time. So it was a very exciting time to see democracy in action, and I built a lot of relationships. And so for me, Taiwan is a really special place. And I suppose that's why.
Okay, thank you. 请问黄少伦同学有在现场吗？
He doesn't have any question left. Thank you, Dr. Smoliar.
Okay, thank you. And next question, please. 好，我们下一题。Okay.
Oh, good question.
Software. Okay.
Soft skills. Yeah. So I would say it's not just for chemical engineering, it's really for any field. When you work on complex problems, you work with engineers or scientists who are in many different fields. So for example, when I worked in the laser industry, I had to communicate across electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, optical engineering, material science, and you have to communicate with customers. So communication skills are really important. Listening skills are really important, especially with customers. You have to really listen to the customer and be able to understand what issues they're facing. Sometimes a customer doesn't know how to tell you exactly what their problem is because they don't see it the same way you do, maybe. But you have to be able to draw that out with good questions. So really, communication skills are very, very important. And building relationships. A lot of business partnerships are built on trust. And you have to be able to build those relationships to gain trust.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smoliar. 请问黄同学有在现场吗？有问题吗？
He doesn't have any question left. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Smoliar.
Okay, thank you. And next question, please. 好，我们下一题。
Cindy, can I suggest that you may want to read out the question? Some of these questions are very long. It's very hard to read that, and maybe you can help to do that.
Okay, I will do so. Thank you. Okay, whenever everyone hears Silicon Valley, the first thing that comes to mind is probably the technology industry. In fact, not everyone in Silicon Valley has the opportunity to have access to these wonderful benefits, and everyone's salary significantly exceeds the national average median. There are even more displaced people living in tents everywhere. How Taiwan's next generation leaders are committed to the adaptive development of each region, and how entrepreneurs can find their own characteristics and stand out from the competition.
I suggest you also go read the Chinese so that our audience can totally understand the questions.
OK， 每当大家听到矽谷，第一个想到的可能就是科技业。事实上，并不是矽谷的每个人都有机会获得这些美妙的福利，而且每个人的薪水都大大超过全国平均中位数。各地还有更多的流离失所者住在帐篷里。台湾下一代领导人如何致力于各地区的适应性发展？企业家如何找到自己的特色，并在竞争中脱颖而出？ Okay, let's welcome Dr. Smoliar.
This is a deep question, and it's an excellent question. I think the United States has huge income disparity, probably wider than in many other countries. And, there's actually a conference coming up very soon at UC San Francisco about access to healthcare. And I mean, this kind of inequality, it isn't just like raw money inequality. It's access to healthcare, access to safe living and equitable living and environmentally healthy situations. It's a huge issue in the US. I think entrepreneurs are problem solvers. And so, for example, this conference is really about how to provide healthcare access to people who are not as privileged. And entrepreneurs work on these things. There's a lot in digital health to make solutions more accessible for people and bring costs down. But this is a huge problem. And I think one where innovation is really needed. I think in Taiwan, there's more of a sense of taking care of everybody, the whole community. And that's something the US would benefit from, that influence. So I think, in healthcare, environmental solutions, all of this is a huge need. So I think for entrepreneurs from Taiwan, you tend to be very innovative and scrappy. You know how to do a lot with a little, and I've seen it over and over again. So I think Taiwan's entrepreneurs can make a huge difference here.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smoliar. 请问廖同学还是廖老师有在现场吗？ Okay, I think he or she, they thank you to you in the chat box.
Actually, Laurie, I would like, this is Dan Kai, I would like to dwell this question. Actually, it's a problem a little bit longer. And you live in the Silicon Valley and in the San Francisco, just next door to Silicon Valley, right? And there is so many homeless people. Now the homeless people really grow. Most people in Taiwan may not be realized that this is really a huge issue. And Los Angeles,
that's right.
San Francisco, that's all a big problem. So I don't really
also
know.
San Jose. I mean, and Berkeley. There are people in tents in Berkeley. Actually, the first time I went to Taiwan, I had lived in New York City. I had lived in Berkeley at that point. And all these cities have homeless people. And my experience of cities always included homeless people. So I always thought that was just part of cities. And then I went to Taipei for the first time, and I didn't see any homeless people. And I was so shocked that you could have a city without homeless people. It was really quite jarring to me. And it was very nice. I mean, I felt very safe walking around everywhere in Taiwan. It was interesting. I mean, part of this is, frankly, I think people don't have as much access to drugs in Taiwan. We have a huge drug problem in the United States, and it leads to a lot of homelessness. So they're sort of intertwined.
Yeah, and thank you very, very much. Allow me to dwell this is a little bit longer because you point out the drug is really the key issues, right? And and Taiwan does have a much less problem in that area compared to compared to California in particular.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just a little bit more emotional right now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Sandy, I apologize for the interruption. Send it back.
No, thank you so much for further asking questions. And let's move on to the next question. 下一题，谢谢。
So,
Sandy, do you want to read out again, please?
Okay, because I think my internet is not that good, so it's a little bit late. OK，来自静宜大学财经系的陈其芳同学的问题：如何加强台湾与国际间在新兴科技领域的合作与交流，以提升全球竞争力 ？How to strengthen cooperation and exchange between Taiwan and the world in emerging science and technology fields to enhance global competitiveness? Okay, let's welcome Dr. Smoliar.
Well, this is one of the real goals of our Taiwan Science and Technology Hub is to do this, is to bring people together from the US and Taiwan in exchanges around technology. So help foster the relationships that can lead to collaborations and working through partnerships. So, this is what we do. We bring people together in symposia, conferences, seminars, things like that. And also we bring people for training to the US.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smoliar. 请问陈其芳同学有在现场吗？或者是在线上？好，请您开启您的麦克风和镜头与讲者互动。
I have no question. Thank you, Dr. Smoliar.
Okay, thank you so much. And maybe next question. 好，我们下一题，谢谢。
Please read out the question. I guess I know you're a little bit delayed. Yeah.
Okay, and it's a question from Fujian Catholic University. Judy, yeah. And how can students from other professions or majors become the entrepreneurs in the field of engineering? And what strengths do these students bring to the table? 其他专业的学生如何成为工程领域的企业家？这些学生有哪些优势？ Okay, let's welcome Dr. Smoliar.
I think there are actually a lot of opportunities for students from more of the liberal arts to participate in the technology arena. Engineers are very good at engineering, but they're not always good at communicating with other people and really distilling concepts for a more general audience as an art. And there are people who are very, very good at this. They tend to be more in the communication area, marketing, public relations, things like that. All of these are important areas. And I think especially in a global arena, you also need the language skills. So I think really just getting experience. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to do some internships and just experience some of these fields, bringing whatever strengths it is you have to the table and participating. I really think that's the best way to see where your best fit is.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Smoliar. And please, 叶玉洁同学，请开启您的镜头和麦克风与讲者互动。
Yeah, thank you, Doctor, for your response. I have no further questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. And next question, please. 好，我们下一题。Okay, it's also the question from Miss Julie. Okay,
Yeah.
what role can linguistic background students play in the time of technology? 语言背景的学生在科技时代可以扮演什么样的角色 ？Okay, let's welcome Dr. Smoliar.
Yeah. So actually, I think a lot of folks in language and linguistics are getting involved in artificial intelligence. And if you look at the human artificial intelligence center that Fei Li runs, I think some of those folks are more in language and linguistics fields. There's a real interesting intersection there with language and AI.
Thank you, Doctor, again. I have no further questions. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you so much. And next question, please. 我们下一题，谢谢。Okay, it's the question from 大同资工系的郑凯玉同学。We should compete with the world in various ways and mentality, and let time see the land of Taiwan and give full play to our advantages. I think there is some translation problem. It means okay, maybe next question first. 大同大学机械系的古廷伟同学 In Taiwan's technology and innovation ecosystem, how do you think education industry and government should collaborate to promote the development of the next generation of leaders? 在台湾科技与创新生态系统中，您认为教育产业和政府应该如何合作，促进下一代领导者的发展 ？Okay, let's welcome Dr. Smoliar.
I spoke a little bit about the product development program at Berkeley. I think they really capture some of this with their capstone projects, where they are getting real problems from industry and having students work on those and be exposed to those companies. And so giving the students sort of real world experience and exposure, I think is very important. Government plays an important role too, in the sense of supporting those activities and enabling them. And frankly, for international participation, we need government to make it easier for students to get visas and be able to come and work as interns and study. So all of it is intertwined.
Okay, thank you so much. 请问古廷伟同学有在现场吗？或者是在线上？麻烦开启您的麦克风和镜头与讲者互动。
I have no question. Thank you, Dr. Smoliar.
Okay, thank you so much. And next question, please. 我们下一题，谢谢。 Okay, I think I can translate this question now. It means what kind of attitude should we hold to compete with the world and to that the time see Taiwan, that the world see Taiwan and take good use of our advantages?
So I think Taiwan really leads in manufacturing know-how, and manufacturing is hard, and bringing things from development into manufacturing is hard, especially the most advanced technologies. This is why TSMC is such a leader, right? Because they're really good at this. That discipline of knowing how to move things from the lab all the way into manufacturing is a real strength, and I think that know-how that's been demonstrated in semiconductor is there's a discipline around it that applies to other fields as well. I think Taiwan really excels in those areas, and I think it should really maintain that.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Smoliar. 请问郑凯玉同学有在现场吗？可以打开麦克风和镜头和讲者互动。请问郑同学在吗？
有。
Okay,
Thank you,
好。
Dr. Lee.
Okay, I think it's Dr. Smoliar. Thank you. And next question, please. 好，我们下一题，谢谢。
I'm laughing because, but I'll let you read the question first.
Okay, thank you. Because of the late internet, sorry. Which of your current jobs are the most challenging for you? 你现阶段的工作中，哪些让你感受到最有挑战 ？Okay, let's welcome Dr. Smoliar.
I think it varies over time. So, things go in cycles. So sometimes being an investor is more challenging. Sometimes being an entrepreneur is more challenging. Sometimes being a parent is more challenging. So it's not a constant. I think in today's climate, for investors who need to raise money, it's very challenging. And for entrepreneurs who need to raise money, it's quite challenging. I spend a lot of time coaching entrepreneurs, and that is the fundraising is quite challenging because of the economic climate we're in. So that's a current challenge.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Smoliar. 请问单炳恩同学有在现场吗？请打开你的麦克风和镜头，和讲者互动。请问单同学在吗？ Okay, I think he's not here. Maybe next question. 下一题，谢谢。OK， 来自台北科技大学机械工程系的张中瑞同学的问题 ：How was it like when you work in academia Seneca in Taiwan back in 1994? Tell us about the experience. Is there any cultural shock? 1994年，您在台湾中央研究院工作时的感受如何？跟我们讲一下经历，有没有文化冲击？ Okay, let's welcome Dr. Smoliar.
So when I went to Taiwan, it was very unusual for Americans to go to Taiwan. And so there were two of us that went together, two Americans. So we stuck out quite a bit, but it was such a friendly environment. And I always remember just feeling very welcome. And but yeah, there was some culture shock. I think, well, first of all, we we flew in right after a typhoon. So I wasn't familiar with typhoons, but we flew in, and lots of the big palm trees were down at National Taiwan University. So that was pretty dramatic. And I used to say that every day was a food adventure. People quickly found out that there were 2 American women in this lab on campus, and every day students came to our lab asking if we wanted to go have lunch or dinner with them. And they would take us to different restaurants, and there were so many different kinds of food. So it was a lot of fun, actually, to do that. But I think when I went, we worked on Saturdays, which is not normal in the US to have that as a work day. So that was a difference. But people worked very hard. I remember the machinist in our institute used to be there at all hours, late into the night, very dedicated. That was unusual for an American to see that. So yeah, there were a lot of differences, but it was a good experience. Yeah.
I remember one of the story in your bio. You said how the price has been negotiated in Taiwan, especially in the market.
Oh yeah, the night market.
Yeah, you want to share the story?
Yeah, so I was taking Mandarin class, and I learned my numbers. I finally learned my numbers, so it was fun to go try to negotiate in the night market. But first we learned the numbers, but it was later that we learned what we call the measure words. So, like you'll say 1.8or 1个, or you have to have the right ending, right, on the number. And people couldn't understand me at first because I didn't know how to use those properly, and I was just saying the number word. So, but I finally learned those and learned enough to be able to negotiate. And I remember I would see the same vendors every week, right? And they could see my progress, and so they were really happy when I could negotiate. And it was kind of a sport. It was fun to do that. Yeah. So that was, yeah.
Yes. Okay, maybe next question. 好，我们下一个问题，谢谢。OK， 来自静宜大学环宇管理学士学位的单炳恩同学 ，I want to know the logic behind the work of senior management and the pressure behind it. Okay, that's welcome, Dr. Smoliar.
So I thought about this question. I think when you become a manager, if you've been in what's called an individual contributor, and then you become a manager, that's a transition. And the biggest challenge is, as an individual contributor, you're doing the tasks, right? You're doing the work. As a manager, you need to influence other people to do the work. And that's very different. And it can be very frustrating, right, if you can't get them to do their job, right? And sometimes you're tempted to just go do it for them, but that's not a good solution because it's not scalable. So there's often a lot of pressure on managers because they're supposed to make other people get their job done. And it's quite a change if you're used to being an individual contributor. But I think management culture in Taiwan and the US may be quite different also. So if you come to the US, it's a change. And I think this is something that, companies find challenging, like TSMC, for example, I think is challenged to hire Americans in Arizona who will work in the work culture of Taiwan because it is different. The expectations of how people behave and deal with management are different. So this is one of the things that it's good to have overseas work experience to understand these differences.
Okay, thank you so much. 请问单秉恩同学有在现场吗？请打开麦克风和镜头与讲者互动。Okay, I think he's not here and is about time to move on. So thank you, Dr. Smoliar. And 好，我们的时间到了，最后一题结束。Thank you, Dr. Smoliar's wonderful talk about opportunities and advantages for the next generation to experience leadership and entrepreneurship programs in the USA, and the potential of Taiwan in the emerging technological industry. Your speech has provided us with valuable insight and knowledge. After your informative and inspiring talk, I believe many of us are considering pursuing programs in the USA and are approaching our future with optimism and promise. Now we would like you to share your takeaway message for our students.
I think the big takeaway is to really look for opportunities to experience life in another country, whether it's to study or to work or both, do an internship. Living and working alongside people in another country is just a huge experience. It will open up your world and it will impact the rest of your life, really. So that's really the big message. I think when you do go abroad, you represent your country, right? And you teach people about your homeland and your culture, your food, all those things. And so, for Americans, we need you to come and teach us about Taiwan. So I hope that you will do that and build your international networks, because really Taiwan needs that for its leaders in the future, for those leaders to have those international networks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Smoliar. Let's give Dr. Smoliar our biggest round of applause to express our sincere appreciation for her insightful speech and invaluable contributions today. Let's move on to the last part of the seminar. I will switch to Mandarin again. 又到了公布得奖名单的时间，有请 NASA 喷射动力实验室的刘登凯博士为我们公布得奖名单。
好谢谢主持人。然后我要用英文讲一下，感谢他。Laurie, I really appreciate that. I know you've been very hard because you have a long trip to Europe and came back to United States. Now we kept you very late, and I really appreciate that. This is just amazing talk here, and hopefully that one of the states, the students will have the opportunity to see you in the United States. Maybe even you come to Taiwan and let us know. Maybe we can assemble a small team and just talk to you together. Sounds okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, I'm going to switch to Mandarin right now. As usual, it's very difficult to. 对不起 that's not Mandarin. 所以也是一样非常非常困难。OK， 大家都是非常好。那我先从这个事前问题里面来做。第一个问题我选到的就是这个阳明交大的陈嘉轩同学，他说提到这个创业都要注意，请问这个您哪些东西有些痛点，这个痛点的话要怎么解决？他有问题有答案，这后来有答案给你，所以我就请这个给这个第一名陈嘉轩同学1000块钱。第二名同学我选到这个是静宜大学的周佩，那不知道怎么念令同学，他说台湾各式各样成长中，除了这半导体以外，还有哪些行业？我想他也答复了你这个问题啊。第三个问题，我给这个大同大学古廷伟同学，哪些投资建议给年轻人？我想他也答复了你这个东西。至于这个现场的问题的话，我就选了很多，不只选了这个3名。我来看看我的笔记好不好？那个第一名我选到是这个大同的 郑凯玉同学，他说，我们应该用什么样的方式和心态去世界来竞争？台湾用什么样的方式？我觉得这个一个很重要的问题，所以我感谢他提出这个问题来，所以我给他这个第1名，这个是1000块钱。那第2名的这个同学呢，也是这个大同大学古廷伟同学，我们刚刚讲到这个另外一个，他有这第2次得奖，他讲说是这个教育产业政府应当是如何合作来促进下一代的领导的这个发展。我想这个是非常非常重要的一个问题啊，感谢他提出来。那我想，我们的演讲也很好的一个答案。那下面这个第3名这个同学呢，我给好几位。第一个我给的是这个廖先生 ，LIAO 是 CSMUH 的。那他说企业家如何能够找自己的特色，并在竞争中脱颖而出。我觉得这个是一个不管任何人，你们工作以后呢，都要想着这个问题。所以说第一个是第3名，然后还有这个第3名，我找一下，在我的这个笔记里面，第3名，第2个第3名是台北科技大学张同学，是讲说是这个他在来台湾以后的有关这个 culture shock。我觉得这个是非常好的问题，他也讲了他笑话讲价的这些东西啊，我觉得非常好。然后第3名的第3名是静宜的这个丹同学，说想要知道自己在高阶管理阶层他们工作的这个逻辑跟背后的压力，我觉得这个问题太好了呀。我想说我们就是给3名这个第3名的。好，我的报告就在这里，然后我交给我们的主持人。
谢谢刘博士，恭喜以上获奖同学。请得奖同学透过荧幕上的 QR code 进入得奖LINE群，确认进入得奖LINE群再离开，以利奖金颁发作业。大胆提问，才能成就非凡未来。5月份演讲由加州理工学院的医学工程助理教授高伟博士带来讲题。皮肤接触式可穿戴生物感测器。再次感谢 Dr. Laura Ann Smoliar， 介绍人辅仁大学校长蓝义正校长及 Beatrice 秘书，本次与会的学校同学以及来宾们，欢迎大家填写回馈表单，让我们能够做得更好。最后，在这里要感谢本次活动中参与幕后筹备工作的师长同学们。欢迎师长同学们，在我念到您的时候，可以向大家挥挥手，让大家认识您哦。感谢大同大学的何明国校长，感谢电算中心包仓楼主任，感谢课程李尚林老师，感谢录影于佩轩同学，感谢与我们合作的辅英科技大学陈义谦老师，感谢东吴大学秦玉国老师，感谢静宜大学陈明柔主任、建慈老师。感谢辅仁大学周德莲老师，感谢铭传大学网络电视转播陈春满小姐，感谢慈济大学江云志老师、谢梦平小姐，感谢台北科技大学秦先玉老师、安恩勇小姐、张双瑞同学，感谢嘉义大学沈永琪主任、玉哲同学，感谢本次的工作人员，负责各项联系事宜的林小丽，负责宣传的黄玉祥，以及负责确认设备状况的林宇恒。最后感谢大家今天的参与，大胆提问还能成就非凡未来。我们5月份的演讲再见，拜拜。